The number that got me was 62.8%. That's how much value the average 5-year-old Infiniti QX80 gave back, according to iSeeCars, which went through the transaction prices of more than 950,000 5-year-old vehicles sold between March 2025 and February 2026. In dollars, that's $52,631 gone. Not stolen, not crashed. Just evaporated while it sat in a driveway. And that vehicle is one of 10 I'm going to walk you through today, because the SUVs arriving on lots right now for the 2027 model year carry 3 separate kinds of regret baked in, and most buyers only ever hear about one of them. Here's the full deal. 10 SUVs, every one of them either on sale now for 2027 or landing this fall, and for each one I'll tell you exactly what the problem is, what it costs when it goes wrong, and whether there's a version of that same vehicle that doesn't have the problem. Real recall numbers, real bulletins, real repair estimates. No guessing. I've spent a long time with these things apart, and if there's one pattern I've watched repeat for 20 years, it's this. The trouble almost never announces itself at the dealership. It announces itself at 38,000 miles on a Tuesday. A few things to watch for as we go. Number 3 on this list runs an engine that got pulled into a recall covering roughly 450,000 vehicles. And there's now a class action alleging the manufacturer knew what was wrong with it back in 2019. Number 6 is a nameplate that's been sitting in American driveways since 2001, and for 2027 it doesn't have an engine at all. And number 9 is that Infiniti, the depreciation champion, and I'll show you the specific reason it's not just bad luck, but the thing that actually made me angry isn't any of the 10. It's what one manufacturer offered its owners as a fix after their SUVs started catching fire. That comes at the end, and I want you to hear the arithmetic on it because it's the cleanest example I've seen in years of a company doing the cheapest possible thing and calling it a remedy. Let's get into it. Before the countdown, one idea, because everything else rests on it. Consumer Reports pulled reliability data from about 380,000 vehicles for its most recent survey, and the person running their auto testing said the thing out loud that the industry would rather you didn't dwell on. The slow, boring approach to redesigns pays off, and aggressive changes with new technology tend to go backwards. Their advice to reliability-minded shoppers was blunt. Stay away from a vehicle in its first model year after a redesign. That's the thread running through this whole list. Every single item is some version of the same trade. There was a time when a manufacturer would put a new body on a proven engine, or a new engine under a proven body, and give themselves 3 or 4 years to sort out whichever half was new. The old hands in this business used to buy the 3rd year of a generation on purpose, not the 1st, the 3rd. By then the seals had been revised, the software had been through 6 updates, and the guy at the parts counter knew which bracket cracks. Now everything changes at once. New platform, new engine, new transmission, new electrical architecture, new infotainment stack, all in the same fall. And the people finding the problems aren't in a lab in Michigan, they're you, 10 of them. Starting with the pair that Consumer Reports named the least reliable in the entire compact crossover class. Number 1, the Chevrolet Equinox and its twin, the GMC Terrain. These two got redesigned for the 2025 model year, and the launch has been rough in a specific expensive way. Consumer Reports named the Equinox the least reliable compact SUV, with the Terrain right behind it, and the reasons they cited weren't rattles and trim. They were the transmission control module, and fluid leaks severe enough that in some cases the transmission had to come out of the car to be fixed. Then in February of this year, GM issued a preliminary information bulletin, PIP 6100, telling dealers that some 2025 and 2026 Equinox and Terrain models with the 8-speed automatic can get stuck in first gear. Happens after you shift from reverse to drive when the transmission's below about 68 degrees. Engine screaming, vehicle crawling. And here's the part that tells you where GM is on this. No diagnostic trouble codes get set when it happens, and as of that bulletin, they were still working out a permanent fix. The 8-speed only lives in the all-wheel drive versions. Front-wheel drive gets a CVT instead. I have never seen a clean public explanation for why one nameplate ships with 2 entirely different transmissions depending on which wheels are driven. My suspicion is packaging and cost, but I want to be straight with you that that's my read and not something GM has stated. By the way, if you drive an SUV and want to keep it reliable for hundreds of thousands of miles without wasting money at the repair shop, I put together a guide called the 500K Mile Car Care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your SUV last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot mechanic upsells that quietly drain your wallet. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera or grab it from the first pinned comment below. What it costs you if it goes past warranty. A transmission control module runs roughly $800 to Sievers $200. A shift solenoid $400 to $700. A leak repair anywhere from $250 to $800 depending on where it's coming from. And a full rebuild lands between $3,500 and $5,000. That's the compact side. Move up one size class and it doesn't get better, it gets worse, and it gets a bulletin about a noise coming from the top of the engine. Number 2, the GMC Acadia and its cousin the Buick Enclave. Consumer Reports withdrew its recommendation on the Acadia entirely. Its predicted reliability landed in the mid-teens on a 100-point scale, and at least one analysis of owner-reported problem rates put it near the very bottom of everything they track. Transmission failures and leaks, sometimes requiring full replacement, plus brake problems, electrical accessory faults, and infotainment trouble. And that separate bulletin I mentioned, PIP 6101, covers a top-end ticking noise on GM's 2.7-liter Turbo 4 and 2.5-liter Turbo 4. That's not just an Acadia problem. That bulletin reaches the Enclave, the Canyon, and the Sierra 1500 as well. A ticking noise from the valve train on a modern Turbo 4 is one of those sounds where the cheap answer and the expensive answer live very close together. Sometimes it's a lifter. Sometimes it's a phaser. Sometimes it's nothing. But you don't find out which one for free. Now, the next one isn't about a bulletin or a survey score. It's about a federal recall and a lawsuit, and it involves a 3-cylinder engine with a mechanism inside it that nobody else in the industry builds. Number 3, the Nissan Rogue. This is the one I flagged at the top. The Rogue's engine is Nissan's VC Turbo, variable compression, and it's genuinely clever engineering. Most engines have a compression ratio that's fixed the day the block is cast. Think of it like the ceiling height in a room. Once the house is built, that's the height. Nissan built a room where the ceiling moves. There's a multi-link mechanism down in the bottom end that physically changes how far the piston travels, so the engine can run a high ratio when it's loafing for economy and drop it when you ask for boost. I want to be fair to the engineering here because it's not stupid. It's the answer to a question engine designers have been circling for a century. The problem is the hardware that does the moving. In June 2025, Nissan filed a recall over bearing failures in the 1.5-liter 3-cylinder and the 2.0-liter 4-cylinder versions of that engine, a campaign covering roughly 450,000 units. A class action followed in Delaware. The complaint alleges failing bearings that can't take the heat and pressure, lower link problems, and software issues, producing knocking, whirring, hesitation, oil consumption, and in some cases outright seizure. It also alleges Nissan knew as early as 2019. Sources disagree on exactly how far forward the affected build dates run. The recall documents describe production ending August 1, 2024, while at least one tracker says it was later expanded to include 2024 and 2025 Rogues. I'm going with the narrower documented window and telling you plainly that the wider claim exists, because on something like this, I'd rather be conservative than confident. Here's the part that matters for a 2027 buyer. The recall remedy for most owners, according to the complaint, amounts to little more than a few oil changes, with replacement parts alleged to be the same design. And a teardown published a couple of weeks ago on a failed 1.5 out of a 2023 Rogue that let go at 43,000 miles found something else entirely. The links and bearings were intact and coolant had gotten into the oil. Different failure, same outcome, still needs an engine, still at 43,000 miles, still while you're making payments. 3 vehicles in, and you've already seen the shape of it. In every case so far, the failure isn't a cheap part. It's the transmission or it's the engine, the two components that decide whether a repair is a weekend or a decision about whether to keep the vehicle at all. From here, the list changes character. The next 4 aren't broken yet. They're brand new, launching this fall, first year of everything, and what I'm going to give you on those is the specific risk, the specific price increase, and what you'd be buying instead. And I still owe you number 6, the SUV that lost its engine, and number 9, the one that gave back 52 130 Baus. Number 4, the Volkswagen Atlas, fully redesigned for 2027, on sale this fall. New MQB Evo platform, new interior, a revised EA888 Turbo 4 making 282 horsepower. 13 more than before, though 15 pound-feet less torque. Bigger screens, a voice assistant with a large language model wired into it, massaging seats. Pricing starts at $43,135, including the $1,525 destination charge. That's $2,350 more than the 2026. And the hybrid version people have been waiting for isn't in the launch lineup. VW has it slated for a mid-cycle update. So the deal on offer is pay more, get more equipment, and volunteer for launch year on a new platform in the model line that made up 30% of Volkswagen's US sales last year. Meanwhile, the outgoing Atlas is a known quantity that's been on sale for 8 model years and sits in the top third of most midsize rankings. If you want an Atlas, the 2026 sitting on the back row of the lot is not the consolation prize. Same story, different badge on the next one, except this time the manufacturer took out an engine that a lot of people bought the vehicle specifically to get. Number 5, the Kia Telluride. Kia skipped 2026 and came back with a full redesign for 2027, and by most accounts they did the most thorough job of anybody this year. Longer wheelbase, more cargo room, more usable third row. They also deleted the V6. The base engine is now a 2.5-liter Turbo 4 making 274 horsepower with an 8-speed automatic. The new hybrid pairs the Turbo 2.5 with electric assist for 329 horsepower and a 6-speed. Base price is $40,735 with destination, about $3,000 above the 2025. The hybrid opens at $48,035, roughly $2,700 above a comparable gas trim. Now I'll level with you. I have not had my hands inside the new hybrid, nobody has any long-term data on it, and Hyundai and Kia's newer engines have earned better marks than their older ones. This is a judgment call, not a report. But the first Telluride built its reputation on a naturally aspirated V6 and a conventional automatic, the two most boring components in the drivetrain, and the two least likely to ruin your year. Replacing both at once in a first model year, in the vehicle that made the brand, is exactly the move Consumer Reports warns about. If you've made it this far, you already know more than most people standing on a dealer lot this weekend. If that's worth something to you, subscribe. The rest of these get more expensive and I'd rather you had them before you sign anything. Because number 6 is the one where a nameplate a lot of people trust becomes something else entirely. Number 6, the Toyota Highlander. For 2027, the Highlander has been reinvented as a 3-row electric SUV. That's it, that's the whole vehicle. Front or all-wheel drive up to 320 miles of range and up to 338 horsepower at NACS charging port and Toyota's latest safety suite. It's set to be the first Toyota EV assembled in the United States. Sales were originally expected to begin in late 2026. Toyota has now confirmed production is delayed, with a spokesperson saying they'll make additional adjustments to the vehicle prior to launch. They didn't say what the adjustments are. I'm not going to invent a reason. I don't know, and neither does anybody else outside Toyota. What I'll say is that a manufacturer with Toyota's launch discipline doesn't push a flagship for fun. Here's why I think a lot of people are going to regret this one specifically, and it's got nothing to do with whether EVs are good. It's about who's walking into the showroom. The Highlander has been a default answer for American families for 25 years. There are people who will go in this fall intending to replace the Highlander in the driveway with another Highlander, the way they've done twice already, and discover that the thing wearing that badge now needs a charger at the house and a rethink of every road trip they take. And the money changed underneath it too. The federal clean vehicle tax credits ended September 30th, 2025. The $7,500 on new EVs and the $4,000 on used ones are gone. Meanwhile, the depreciation picture is ugly. Multiple studies put 5-year EV value loss around 55 to 60%, and one appraisal analysis reckoned a $55,000 electric SUV is worth somewhere between $27,000 and $30,000 after 3 years. That's not a reason nobody should buy an electric SUV. It's a reason you should not buy one by accident because it has a familiar name on the tailgate. Number 7 is where the regret stops being financial. Number 7, the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. In November, Chrysler recalled 320 65 plug-in hybrids, 2020 through 2025, Wrangler 4xe, and 2022 through 2026 Grand Cherokee 4X, because they can catch fire while parked or while driving. The Grand Cherokee share of that is 91,244 vehicles. NHTSA's guidance was direct: park outside, away from structures and other vehicles, and do not charge the battery because a charged pack carries more risk than a depleted one. Read that again. The instruction to owners of a plug-in hybrid was to stop plugging it in. The entire feature you paid extra for switched off by advisory with no end date. The cause is damage to the separators between cells inside the battery pack. And for a lot of these vehicles, this was the third recall for the same underlying problem. That's the item. The reason it made me angry is what Chrysler offered as a fix, and I'm holding that for a few minutes because you need one more number first. Two more before we get there, and they're the two ends of the market, the mainstream electric SUV and the six-figure luxury one, which between them tell you that the price of the badge has almost nothing to do with the odds of trouble. Number 8, the Chevrolet Blazer EV and Equinox EV. The Blazer EV's launch is already an industry cautionary tale. Frozen and blank infotainment screens, error messages, DC fast charging failures, and a temporary sales pause while GM sorted it out with a dealer-installed software update. Consumer Reports has it near the bottom for reliability, with owners reporting battery and cooling problems, electric heating and AC compressor failures, 12-volt battery trouble, and screens going dark. The Equinox EV, which shares the same underlying platform, has had a run of its own. In early 2026, GM launched a recall covering roughly 102,000 Equinox EVs over a vehicle control software defect that can cause unexpected loss of power while driving. Separately, 81,077 of them were recalled because the pedestrian alert sound doesn't get loud enough as the vehicle pulls away from a stop, and GM estimated 100% of the affected vehicles had the defect. I'll give credit where it's due. Most of these are software, most get fixed free, and some go out over the air. That's genuinely better than a warranty claim on a seized engine, but a software-defined vehicle means your SUV is only ever as good as the last update somebody pushed to it, and that's a different relationship with a machine than the one most of us grew up with. Number 9, the Infiniti QX80, the one from the top. Highest 5-year depreciation of any vehicle in that iSeeCars study, 62.8%, 52,630 hours gone. 18 of the 25 worst performers were luxury models. That's not one bad model year. That's a segment-wide pattern, heavy first-owner incentives, thin second-owner demand, and running costs that scare off exactly the buyer who'd otherwise take it off your hands. Which brings us to the brand that has made an art form of that arithmetic. Number 10, the Range Rover and Range Rover Sport. RepairPal rates the Range Rover 2.0 out of 5.0, 15th out of 19 luxury full-size SUVs, with average annual repair and maintenance running $550 against $650 across all vehicles. The Sport comes in at $179. As a brand, Land Rover sits 31st out of 32 in that same rating system, with about a 16% chance that any given repair qualifies as severe. And the entry ticket is the real problem. Land Rover's average transaction price is €190.87, second only to Porsche. So the arithmetic runs like this. You pay near the top of the market, you carry repair costs roughly double the all-vehicle average, and then you hand the thing to a used car buyer who has read exactly the same numbers you just heard and prices accordingly. Now I know how the objection goes because I've heard it in person more than once. My Rover's been faultless. I've had 3. The reliability thing is a myth peddled by people who've never owned one. And honestly, fine. Plenty of them do run well. The newest ones score better than the old ones, and if you love the vehicle, that's a real reason to own it. I just want you going in with the running cost written down somewhere in ink before the salesman starts talking about the leather. So that's the 10. Now the part I've been holding. Go back to the Jeep, not to the fire risk and to what they offered you afterwards. The battery packs in those 4xe models have damaged separators between the cells. That is a hardware defect. Physical. Inside a sealed pack. There is no line of code anywhere in the world that repairs a physical separator inside a battery cell. The remedy Chrysler put in front of owners was a software update to the battery pack control module to improve the diagnostics so the vehicle could detect the damage earlier and warn you. Sit with that. The fix wasn't to make your battery safe. The fix was to make your battery better at telling you it isn't. And here's where the arithmetic turns cold, because we know how that worked out. In the recall filing, Chrysler reported it was aware of 19 fires originating from the battery pack, and 9 of those were in vehicles that had already received the remedy software. Chrysler determined the previous remedy was ineffective at detecting the abnormalities that lead to a fire. 9 out of 19. Nearly half the fires happened in vehicles that had already been through the fix, which means the people who did everything right, who got the notice, who took a day off, who drove to the dealer, who sat in the waiting room and came out believing the problem was handled. Those people were driving a vehicle in the same condition it was in before, plus a false sense of security. And when the third recall landed, the remedy still wasn't ready. Owners were told to park outside, away from your house, and don't charge it. Indefinitely. Nobody sat in a room and decided to burn your garage down. That's not what this is. What happened is that somebody somewhere ran the numbers on a full pack replacement across 320,000 vehicles versus a control module reflash, and the reflash won. It always wins. A software campaign is a few $100s a car and a couple of hours of dealer time. Replacing hundreds of thousands of high-voltage packs is a number with a B in front of it. That decision doesn't require malice. It just requires a spreadsheet and nobody in the room whose garage is at stake. So here's the sentence I want you to be able to spot from now on, because you'll see it again on something that has nothing to do with Jeep. When a manufacturer answers a hardware defect with a software update, the question is never, did they fix it? The question is, what physical thing changed on my vehicle? If the answer is nothing, if no part came off and no part went on, then what you received was a better warning light. Sometimes a better warning light is the right answer, but it is not a repair, and you're entitled to ask them to say which one they're giving you. That won't work on you again. Let me step back from all of it for a second, because there's something underneath this list that I think is more useful than any individual model. What we've really been doing for the last half hour is practicing judgment, not memorizing a list. Lists go stale, and this one will be out of date in 18 months. Judgment is the thing that doesn't expire, and the shape of it is unglamorous. The people who consistently end up with a good vehicle aren't the ones who researched hardest or spent most. They're the ones who worked out which parts of a machine are proven and which parts are being tried out for the first time, and then declined to volunteer for the second category. That's it. That's the skill. There's a quiet satisfaction in that I don't think gets talked about enough. Boring is not a failure of ambition. Boring is an engineering achievement. It means somebody found the problems already, redesigned the seal, revised the software, and moved on. Every dull, uneventful vehicle you've ever owned was dull because a lot of people did unglamorous work on it for several years before you got there. And judgment travels. Once you can look at a spec sheet and see which parts are new and which parts are carried over, you're doing something you can apply to a furnace, a mower, a boat, a phone. The vehicle is just where it's easiest to practice, because the stakes are high enough to make you pay attention. All right, here's how you actually use all of this. The list again, quick. Equinox and Terrain for the transmission. Acadia and Enclave for the drivetrain and the top-end tick. Rogue for the variable compression engine. Atlas for launch year on a new platform. Telluride for a brand new engine and a brand new hybrid at once. Highlander because the badge no longer means what you think. Grand Cherokee 4xe for the battery. Blazer EV and Equinox EV for the software. QX80 for the depreciation. Range Rover for the running cost. Now the procedure. 4 steps and you can run it on any SUV including ones I never mentioned. 1. Find out what year that generation launched. If the answer is this year or last year, you are in the risk window and everything after this step gets weighted more heavily. 2. Look at the powertrain separately from the vehicle. Is the engine carried over from a model that's been on sale 3 years or more? Is the transmission? A new body over a proven powertrain is a very different bet from a new everything. If both are new in the same year, treat that as a hard mark against. 3. Go to the NHTSA recall site and look up the previous 2 model years of that same nameplate. Not the one you're buying, the ones before it. That's free, it takes about 10 minutes, and it tells you what the factory is actually shipping rather than what the brochure promises. Read whether the remedy was a part or a software update. 4. Look up the 5-year depreciation on that specific model and subtract it from the purchase price. That's your real cost, not the payment. Now the decision rule. If it's a launch year and the powertrain is new and there's already a recall history on the nameplate, walk. Don't negotiate, don't wait for a better incentive. Walk. If it's a launch year but the powertrain is carried over, that's a normal risk and you can proceed with a normal amount of caution. And if it's the 3rd or 4th year of a generation with a carryover powertrain, you've found the boring one. Buy it. The payoff for running that 4-step check isn't something you'll see. That's the strange thing about it. It's the transmission bill that never lands. It's the November morning you don't spend on the phone with a service writer explaining that it's stuck in 1st gear again. It's the recall letter that comes for somebody else's vehicle. You'll never know exactly which disaster you swerved, and that's fine. You'll just have a normal, uneventful 5 years, and that's the whole prize. Now I want to hear from you, and I want something specific. Tell me what's in your driveway right now that has gone the distance. Make, model, year, mileage, and the honest total you've spent on repairs. Not the version you tell your neighbor, the real one. And if you've been burned by something on this list, or something I should have put on this list, say so and say what the bill was. The numbers people post in the comments are consistently more useful than anything I can pull out of a survey, because a survey doesn't tell you what the shop actually charged. And if you own one of these 10 and it's been perfect, I especially want to hear that. I'd rather be corrected in public than be wrong in private. I read the replies. All of them, eventually, including the ones that start by telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. There's a thread here I deliberately didn't pull. I've got a stack of service bulletins sitting on the bench covering the modern 8 and 9-speed automatics, different manufacturers, same suppliers in some cases, wildly different reputations, and I still can't work out why 2 transmissions built to the same brief end up decades apart and how long they last. I'm chasing it. When I've got something solid, I'll bring it to you. If you'd like to be here when I do, subscribing is the way that happens. Until then, check the redesign year before you check the color.